So Razer just revealed their brand new BlackShark V3 Pro gaming headset, but I've already spent a week with it to test it out and tell you what I think. Now, the BlackShark V3 Pro brings some big upgrades over the V2 Pro, including active noise cancellation, which is a first for the series. It's also got new drivers, a new mic, and even lower latency for wireless connectivity, plus a ton of EQ presets, many of which are tuned by esports champions whose names you probably know. So are the features worth the upgrade, or has Razer focused too much on the pro players that they've forgotten about, the average gamer? Let's get into it. So starting off, there are 3 different model variants of the BlackShark V3 Pro: Xbox, PC, and a PlayStation version, each distinguished by different colored stitching. As you can see here, the Xbox one has green stitching, the PC one is just black, and the PlayStation version is, as you might have guessed, a blue stitching. Design-wise, they still all look like a BlackShark headset. You've still got that signature forked yoke design on the sides, which do feel a bit more durable than the previous V2 Pro. However, the headset still doesn't provide a very strong clamping force, and the ear cups tend to slide down out of the yokes a little too easily, which unfortunately does compromise getting a good seal. So getting a good fit does require some fidgeting with the headset, and this does unfortunately affect the ANC performance, but more on that later. The good news is that it is fairly lightweight and comfortable once you do get it positioned right. The cloth padding is definitely softer, I find, than the previous generation, though I did notice some heat buildup around my ears over longer gaming sessions. Although, to be fair too, that is probably in part due to the fact that I was testing this headset during the hot summer months. While the headset still can't rotate to lay flat, it can now swivel at a 15 degrees angle, so that does help the ear cups sort of match and conform to the shape of your ears better. Another cool addition is that the BlackShark V3 Pro now features swappable magnetic faceplates, allowing you to easily, change up your style of your headset. But more importantly than that, it actually gives you easy access to the removable battery inside the ear cup. So while it's nice that the faceplates are swappable and that you can get to that battery to replace it, I do wish that Razer had gone further and actually made the ear cups themselves replaceable as well. Still, it is a nice step towards better repairability in your headset. Now, in terms of controls, the headset has 6 different buttons, 4 of which are identical in shape and size, and only one of those 4 is textured. So that does make it a bit hard to tell, which button you're pressing by feel alone. That does mean it's going to require a bit of memorization on the part of the user as to which button is where, since identifying them by feel alone, is tricky since they all feel the same. But at least the voice prompts will tell you what you just pressed. So that textured button I mentioned is the power button on the left ear cup. You've also got that big volume knob, which is pretty typical of BlackShark headsets. It is textured as well this time around, which is a little bit nicer. Above the power button, you also got a mic mute button, which will show a green ring around it to indicate when the mic is not muted. Over on the right ear cup, you got a smart switch button that cycles through EQ profiles with a single tap, or switches connection modes with a double tap. There's also a customizable roller beneath that, which defaults to game chat balance, and you've got a dedicated ANC button on the bottom to cycle through different noise cancellation modes. So for gaming, the primary wireless connection method is going to be this 2.4 GHz dongle that uses Razer's new Hyperspeed Gen 2 technology, which they claim delivers just 10 milliseconds of latency. Now 10 milliseconds is pretty impressive because most of the gaming headsets I've tested, the fastest I have seen have been around between 15 to 20 to 25 milliseconds. I didn't experience any dropouts or lag at all with this headset, and honestly, 10 milliseconds is about the fastest you're going to get, because anything lower than that just simply isn't going to be perceptible to human ears anyway. One quirk about the wireless dongle though is that unlike most gaming headsets where you just plug the dongle directly into your PC or console, Razer's dongle now needs a USB-C to USB-A cable to connect the dongle to your PC or console. The idea, I think, is that allows you to position it better for a better line of sight, which theoretically should improve signal stability. In practice though, the base of the dongle here just isn't very grippy, and it can easily tip over, especially if the weight of your cable is rather heavy. I think it really would have been better if there was actually like a stickered base surface to this, so you could just, stick it in place to where you want. Of course, you would have to, decide that is where you want to keep your dongle. but it would have provided better stability for it. It's also a little awkward if you want to use the dongle with handheld gaming systems like Steam Deck or Switch. As you know, it's just going to be dangling from your system by a cable. You also get Bluetooth 5.3 connectivity, and now you can finally use both wireless connection modes simultaneously, which means you can, say, have your game coming through the low latency 2.4 gigahertz connection while also running Discord or music through Bluetooth at the same time. You also get 2 wired connectivity options, being USB audio and 3.5mm analog. Now, Razer does include a USB-C to 3.5mm cable in the box, but if you want to use wired USB audio, you're going to have to either unplug the cable connecting the wireless dongle or find an equivalent cable on hand, because Razer only includes one cable. Just keep in mind too that USB wired audio isn't supported on Xbox or PlayStation, so you can only use it on PC or mobile or what have you. So the Razer audio app is fairly useful. You get a 10-band custom EQ that lets you dial in the sound exactly how you want it, and you can store up to 9 EQ presets directly on the headset itself, so that means you can take your custom EQ presets and bring them over to Xbox, PlayStation, wherever you want. The app also handles ANC controls, microphone EQ with different EQ presets for the microphone, including things like esports or broadcasting, and you get mic monitoring there as well. On PC, Razer Synapse gives you access to all those pro-tuned EQ profiles I mentioned, all of which are catered to specific FPS shooter games. And while it is kind of cool that you can use, your favorite esports players' audio settings here, I don't think that alone is really going to translate in the same way or make you a better gamer, just by slapping on the EQ presets. And that's because everyone's ears are different, right? It's not as easy as a one EQ fits all. Also, these are hyper-specific tunings, and I found that they didn't sound very good for anything outside of the intended game titles. You can go check out my review on SoundGuys.com to see all the objective measurements and MDAX scores for each of the EQ presets. But just, as an example, I think it was the Valorant esports EQ preset. That one actually performed pretty terribly in MDAX. That's just an indication of how hyper-specific the tuning is, right? And it's not something that's going to make music sound good or other things sound good. Razer Synapse also lets you enable THX Spatial audio for supported games. And if you're not on PC, the headset will automatically switch to the right spatial audio for whatever platform you happen to be on. So that means you get Windows Sonic over on Xbox and 3D Tempest audio over on PlayStation. The Razer BlackShark V3 Pro has pretty solid battery performance. Razer claims up to 70 hours of battery life on PC, but only 48 hours on Xbox or PlayStation. Now, while it is common for consoles not to optimize power usage as efficiently as PC, that 22-hour difference is pretty significant if you aren't a PC gamer. Personally, I would have liked to have seen the console-specific models of the BlackShark V3 Pro be better optimized, for the consoles that they're specific towards. Still, the battery life is above average for gaming headsets. It's not as long as something like the HyperX Cloud 3's, crazy 200-hour plus battery life, but it's enough to last you through a few days before needing to be recharged. The headset charges over USB-C, and as I showed you earlier, being able to access the battery through the swappable faceplate, that is a welcome step towards repairability that will extend the headset's lifespan. So as you can see, the microphone is detachable, and it uses a new 12mm capsule. If we pull the windscreen off, it's got a new 12mm capsule that's upgraded from the V2 Pro's 9mm capsule, and it has a crazy 48 kilohertz sampling rate, which really does make a difference. I did find my voice came through clearly and naturally, almost like as if I was speaking to someone, sitting right next to me, rather than speaking through a gaming headset mic. You can check out my full review on SoundGuys.com to listen to all of our mic samples for yourself. But what I will note here is that the only downside is that noise rejection isn't the greatest. Background noise like, say, phones ringing or a blender whirring in the kitchen, the mic will pick those up and they do come through. Although they don't overpower your voice, they are still audible. So ANC, right? How good is the new ANC? This is the first time ANC has come to the BlackShark series. And in our testing, we measured about 77% total average attenuation. 77% is around the average that we would see from things like earbuds or over-ear headphones. And as you can see from our measurement charts, the ANC mainly helps cancel out low frequency noise, so things like AC units or your neighbors thumping around upstairs, all that is going to be blocked out pretty effectively. But you remember those fit issues I mentioned earlier? Unfortunately, they do impact ANC performance. For starters, we had one heck of a time fitting the headset to our testing rig in a way that didn't interrupt the seal somehow, and in my experience, the headset's ANC performance just wasn't always as good as what our measurements would suggest. For instance, I could overhear conversations from people just standing a few feet away from me, even with ANC on. So I'm going to give you a tip as to what I found helped me get a good fit here. So I found that the best method to get a good fit was to push the ear cups up while holding the yoke band in place while wearing the headset. So hold the yoke band and then push the ear cups up. Don't try to put the headset on and then, bring it down, because again, the looseness, they will just fall down too loosely. But again, it's going to be something that's kind of a constant readjustment you're just going to have to deal with. Really, I think if Razer is going to be serious about doing ANC right, they need to rethink this design and maybe retire this helicopter headset yoke design and come up with something that does provide a better clamping force and a better seal. It's unfortunate because you bring ANC, but then the design itself just doesn't provide the right isolation to enable the ANC to perform its best. Okay, so let's get into how this headset actually sounds. Overall, the BlackShark V3 Pro has boosted bass strength and treble strength, but has a bit of a reduced mid-range. Starting in the low end, there's good bass depth with a bass lift around 60 Hz that does make things like explosions and environmental effects feel impactful without getting too boomy. However, the reduced mid-range strength does mean that voices and in-game dialogue can lack some presence. The real issues I have though are in the treble region. As you can see, there's some very overemphasized peaks, at least compared to our house curve, that makes certain sounds just too shrill. Things like glass breaking, gunshots, even reloading effects, all of them have a very sharp character that become fatiguing over long listening sessions. So yes, this kind of tuning does help with localizability, you'll be able to hear enemy footsteps clearly, but it does come at a cost. For music, for instance, tracks like Daft Punk's Get Lucky, it just sounds brighter than what I'm used to, and sibilant noises like hi-hats sound too shrill, and they can just be unpleasant. The good news is that you can fix a lot of that with the custom 10-band EQ in the app. The bad news is that you will have to use the custom EQ because none of the EQ presets sound all that great. Now you can go check out my full review on SoundGuys to see all the data and measurements for yourself, but basically, to give you an overview, all the EQ presets, they're much more extreme V-shaped curves. They have much more bass or much more treble or much more of both. They don't really help with any of the things they're intended to do. As for the THX Spatial audio here, I found that directionality was very good. For example, things like Counter-Strike 2, I felt I could accurately pinpoint where enemy footsteps were coming from with confidence. However, the internality did become a bit indistinct during intense firefights, and by that I mean things like gunshots, they felt trapped inside my head rather than being distinctly positioned out in the game world. So, should you buy the Razer BlackShark V3 Pro? Well, if you're a competitive FPS player seeking the absolute best wireless latency possible, I think yes. I mean, that 10 millisecond wireless connectivity is genuinely best in class, the localizability for tracking enemies is very good, and the mic will pick up your voice clearly for team communication. But for everyone else, there are some significant compromises. For starters, that treble strength does make longer gaming sessions fatiguing unless you mess with the EQ, and unfortunately the fit issues just undermine the effectiveness of the ANC performance. So for $250, you're paying a premium for features that mainly benefit competitive players. So ultimately, the headset feels more like a specialized tool for esports enthusiasts rather than a well-rounded premium headset for casual gamers or single-player experiences. Now, if that describes you and you can work around the quirks, it delivers on its competitive promise. But if you want something more versatile for the price, you might want to look elsewhere. And by elsewhere, I mean this video right over here.